What if I told you that the only thing standing between the life you're living right now and the life you've been dreaming about is not money, not talent, not connections, but the way your mind operates? Sounds almost too simple, right? But stay with me here, because this might be the most important thing you hear all year. Have you ever looked at someone, maybe a colleague, maybe a stranger online, maybe someone younger than you, and thought, how do they do it? How do they stay so focused, so calm, so driven, while I'm over here struggling just to get through the week? Yeah, me too. I've been there. And I'll tell you something most people won't admit. That feeling, that quiet frustration of knowing you're capable of more, but somehow never getting there. It's one of the loneliest feelings in the world. But here's what changed everything for me, and what I believe is about to change everything for you. It wasn't a magic morning routine. It wasn't some secret productivity app. It was a decision to stop trying to fix my life from the outside and start rebuilding it from the inside, from the mind. Because once your mind shifts, everything around you starts shifting too. Your relationships, your energy, your confidence, your results, all of it. This audiobook is not another motivational speech that gives you goosebumps for 20 minutes and then disappears. No, this is a real, practical, step-by-step guide to constructing a mind so powerful, so resilient, so razor-sharp that people around you will start noticing the difference before you even say a word. We're going to rebuild the way you think, the way you handle emotions, the way you make decisions, the way you talk to yourself when nobody's listening, and most importantly, the way you see yourself. Because the truth is, you already have everything you need inside you. You've always had it. You just haven't been shown how to unlock it yet. So whether you're listening to this at 5 in the morning before the world wakes up, or late at night when everything's quiet and you finally have a moment to yourself, I want you to know something. You're exactly where you need to be right now. And by the time we finish this journey together, you won't just understand how extraordinary minds work. You'll have one. Let's get into it. Chapter 1. Tear down the old blueprint and build a new one. Here's something nobody talks about enough. Most of us are walking around with a mental blueprint we didn't even design. Think about that for a second. The beliefs you carry about who you are, what you deserve, what you're capable of, where did they actually come from? Did you sit down one day and carefully choose them? Or did they just kind of, get installed in you over time? For most of us, it's the second one. We absorbed them from our parents, from school, from friendships that didn't always lift us up, from failures we took way too personally, from moments where someone said something careless, and it stuck with us for years. And now we're trying to build an extraordinary life on top of a blueprint that was never ours in the first place. Ever tried renovating a house with a cracked foundation? You can paint the walls, upgrade the furniture, put in brand new floors. But the moment a storm hits, the whole thing shakes. That's what happens when you try to change your life without first changing the internal architecture of your mind. You push yourself for a week, maybe 2. You feel motivated, inspired, unstoppable. And then one bad day, one harsh comment, one unexpected setback, and suddenly you're right back where you started. Does that sound familiar? Be honest with yourself for a moment. How many times have you started something with fire in your belly only to watch that fire burn out before you even got close to the finish line? It's not because you're weak. It's not because you lack willpower. It's because the blueprint underneath hasn't been updated. You're running new software on an old operating system, and the system keeps crashing. So what do we do about it? We tear it down. Not violently, not with self-hatred, but with awareness and intention. We look at the old beliefs and we ask a very simple question. Is this actually true? Or is this just something I've been repeating so long that it feels true? Because there's a massive difference between what's real and what's familiar. I'm not a disciplined person. Is that true? Or is that just a story you've been telling yourself since high school because you procrastinated on a few assignments? I always give up. Really? Always? Or did you give up a few times and then turn that into your entire identity? I'm not the kind of person who succeeds at things like this. Says who? Who decided that? Because I promise you, it wasn't the universe. It was a thought you repeated until it became a belief. And beliefs shape identity, and identity shapes action, and action shapes your entire life. Here's the beautiful part, though. If repetition created the old identity, repetition can create a new one. You don't have to wait until you feel ready. You don't have to wait until confidence magically shows up at your door with flowers and a motivational speech. You decide first. You declare who you're becoming. And then you start acting like that person, even if it feels strange at first, especially if it feels strange at first. Because discomfort isn't a sign that something's wrong. Discomfort is a sign that something's changing, and change is exactly what we're here for. Let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed that little voice in your head, the one that whispers, "You're not enough," right? When you're about to do something brave? That voice that says, "Don't even try," or "Who do you think you are?" Yeah, we all have that voice, every single one of us. The difference between people who build extraordinary lives and people who stay stuck isn't the absence of that voice. It's what they do when they hear it. Most people obey it. They hear you're not ready, and they stop. They hear, "What if you fail?" and they retreat. But what if, instead of obeying that voice, you just acknowledged it and kept moving? What if you said, "Yeah, I hear you, but I'm doing this anyway"? That's the moment everything changes. Not when the doubt disappears, but when you stop letting it steer. Rebuilding your inner blueprint is not a one-time event. It's a daily practice. Every morning you wake up, you have a choice. Am I going to operate from the old blueprint today, or am I going to choose the new one? And some days it'll be easy. Some days you'll feel aligned, powerful, unstoppable. But other days, the old patterns will pull at you. The old thoughts will knock on your door. And on those days, the only thing that matters is that you don't open the door. You acknowledge the knock, and you keep building. Think of it like planting a garden in a place where weeds have been growing for years. You can't just plant the new seeds and walk away. You have to keep pulling the weeds. You have to water the new growth. You have to protect the soil. And for a while, it might look like nothing is happening. But underneath the surface, roots are forming. Roots that will eventually hold up something beautiful, something strong, something lasting. That's what's happening inside you right now. Even if you can't see it yet, the work is already beginning. The old blueprint is cracking, the new one is being drawn. And you're the architect. Not your past, not your circumstances, not that voice in your head. You. So here's what I want you to do right now. Not tomorrow, not next week. Right now. Decide one thing about your new blueprint. Just one. Maybe it's, I am someone who follows through. Maybe it's, I handle hard things with calm strength. Maybe it's, I am worthy of the life I'm building. Pick one. Write it down if you can. Say it out loud if you're alone. And then carry it with you into the next chapter. Because we're just getting started. And the mind we're building together is going to be something remarkable. Chapter 2. Sculpt your mind the way a sculptor shapes stone. Have you ever watched a sculptor work? Not in a rushed, chaotic way, but with that quiet, deliberate patience where every strike of the chisel is intentional. They start with a raw, unformed block, and they don't panic because it doesn't look like anything yet. They know the masterpiece is already in there. Their job is just to remove what doesn't belong. That's exactly how you need to approach your mind. Your mind right now might feel cluttered, scattered, undisciplined, maybe even a little chaotic. That's okay. That doesn't mean it's broken. It just means it hasn't been sculpted yet. It hasn't been shaped with intention, and that's what this chapter is about. Treating your mental development like a craft, something you practice every single day, not because you're forced to, but because you understand that consistency is the chisel that reveals greatness. Let me ask you something honest. When was the last time you deliberately trained your mind? Not your body, not your skills, your mind. Most people never do this. They go to the gym for their muscles, but let their mind run on autopilot. They eat well for their body, but feed their mind absolute garbage. And then they wonder why their thinking is foggy. Their emotions are all over the place, and their focus lasts about as long as a candle in a hurricane. Your mind needs training just like your body does. Actually, it needs it more, because your mind is the engine that drives everything else. Your discipline, your decisions, your emotional stability, your creativity, it all starts in the mind. And a mind that isn't trained is a mind that's controlled by whatever happens to grab its attention. Does this resonate with you? Have you ever sat down to work on something important, something you genuinely care about, and within 10 minutes, your brain is somewhere else entirely? Scrolling, daydreaming, worrying about something that hasn't even happened yet? That's an untrained mind, and there's no shame in it. That's where most people live. But you're not here to be most people. Training your mind starts with small, consistent practices. And I mean small. We're not talking about meditating for an hour or reading an entire book in one sitting. We're talking about micro commitments that stretch your mental muscles just enough to create growth. Spend 10 minutes in the morning reading something that challenges your thinking, not the news, not social media, something with depth. Sit in stillness for 5 minutes. No phone, no music, no distractions, just you and your thoughts. I know it sounds almost too simple, but have you actually tried it? Like really tried it consistently for more than 3 days? Most people haven't. And that's exactly why most people's minds stay untrained. Here's something I want you to understand deeply. Mental strength isn't built in dramatic moments. It's built in the boring, repetitive, invisible moments that nobody sees. It's built when you sit with a difficult emotion instead of distracting yourself from it. It's built when you finish the task you started, even though every part of you wants to quit. It's built when you choose to think before you react, even when your emotions are screaming at you to explode. These tiny moments, they're the reps. They're the mental push-ups. And every single one of them counts, even the ones that feel pointless, especially the ones that feel pointless, because those are the ones that build the kind of quiet, invisible strength that shows up exactly when you need it most. Now let me tell you something that might surprise you. Rest is part of the training. I know that sounds contradictory in a world that glorifies grinding until you collapse. But hear me out. A sculptor doesn't strike the stone nonstop without pausing. They step back. They observe. They breathe. They let their eyes rest so they can see more clearly when they return. Your mind works the same way. If you push it relentlessly without giving it space to recover, you don't get brilliance, you get burnout. And burnout isn't a badge of honor, it's a signal that you've been ignoring your mind's need for restoration. So, build recovery into your routine. Sleep well. Take walks without your phone. Let your mind wander, sit somewhere quiet, and just breathe. These aren't luxuries. These are necessities for a mind that performs at a high level. And here's another truth that most people miss. Confidence doesn't come from positive affirmations alone. Confidence comes from evidence, from doing hard things and surviving, from facing the uncomfortable and not running. Every time you push through a moment where you wanted to quit, your mind takes a mental photograph. It files it away. And the next time you face something hard, your mind pulls up that photograph and says, "Remember? You handled it before. You can handle it again." That's how real lasting confidence is built. Not from words, but from proof. Not from wishing, but from doing. Not from one big heroic moment, but from 1,000 small courageous ones stacked on top of each other. So I want you to think of your mind like a block of marble. Right now, it might not look like much. It might feel rough, unfinished, full of parts you wish you could change. But the masterpiece is already in there. Your job isn't to become someone completely new. Your job is to chisel away the habits, the thoughts, the beliefs that don't serve you, the doubts that weigh you down, the distractions that scatter your energy, the stories that keep you small. Chip away at them, day by day, thought by thought, choice by choice. And what's left underneath all of that noise is the strongest, clearest, most powerful version of you. You don't have to be perfect at this. You just have to keep showing up. Keep picking up the chisel. Keep doing the work even when it feels like nothing is changing. Because it is changing. You are changing. And one day, maybe sooner than you think, you'll look at your life and barely recognize the person staring back at you. Not because you became someone else, but because you finally became yourself. The version of yourself that was always waiting underneath the surface. The sculpted version, the trained version, the version with a mind so sharp and steady that doubt doesn't even bother knocking anymore. And that version, that's who we're building together. One chapter at a time. One chisel strike at a time. Chapter 3. Clear the static and sharpen your attention. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine you're standing in a room with 50 televisions, every single one tuned to a different channel. all of them blaring at full volume. News on one, music on another, an argument on a third, a cooking show on a fourth. Now imagine someone walks in and asks you to solve a complex math problem. Could you do it? Probably not. Not because you're not smart enough, but because your brain is drowning in noise. Well, here's the uncomfortable truth. That's how most of us live every single day. Not with 50 televisions, but with 50 open tabs in our minds. 50 worries, 50 notifications, 50 unfinished conversations, 50 things we meant to do but never got around to. And we sit there wondering why we can't focus, why we feel mentally exhausted by noon, why we start projects with passion and abandon them within days. It's not a focus problem, it's a noise problem. And until you deal with the noise, focus will always feel like something other people have, but you don't. Can I be real with you for a second? How many times today did you pick up your phone without even thinking about it? Not because you had something important to check, but just because your hand reached for it automatically, like a reflex? 5 times? 10? 20? No judgment here. I've done it too. We all have. But every single one of those moments is a tiny leak in your attention tank. And when you have enough leaks, the tank runs dry before you've used your attention on anything that actually matters. That's the hidden cost of mental noise. It doesn't just distract you. It drains you. It steals the energy you need for the things that could genuinely change your life. So how do we fix this? How do we go from a mind that feels like a crowded airport terminal to a mind that feels like a quiet mountain cabin? It starts with something deceptively simple. You have to stop feeding the noise. Every notification you allow, every pointless argument you engage in, every piece of low-value content you consume, it's all food for the chaos. And your mind will eat whatever you put in front of it. It doesn't discriminate. It consumes gossip the same way it consumes wisdom. The difference is what it produces afterward. Feed it noise, and you get confusion. Feed it intention, and you get clarity. The choice is yours, and it's a choice you make dozens of times every single day. Here's a practice that changed my perspective on focus, and I think it might change yours too. Try sitting in complete silence for just 5 minutes tomorrow morning. No phone, no music, no podcast, no conversation. Just you, sitting with your own thoughts. And I'll warn you right now, it's going to feel weird. Your brain is going to fight it. It's going to say this is boring, or check your messages, or think about what you need to do today. That resistance, that's your mind detoxing. That's the noise trying to hold its territory. But if you stay with it, something incredible starts to happen. The volume starts to drop. The static starts to clear. And underneath all that noise, you'll find something you might not have felt in a long time. Clarity. Real deep, grounding clarity. The kind that makes you feel like you can actually think again. Now let me share something else that most people overlook. Your mind can only hold so many open loops at once. An open loop is anything unfinished, an unanswered email, a decision you've been postponing, a conversation you need to have but keep avoiding, a pile of tasks sitting in the back of your mind. Every single one of those loops is taking up mental bandwidth even when you're not consciously thinking about them. They're running in the background like apps on your phone, silently draining your battery. So close the loops. Write everything down. Get it out of your head and onto something external. Paper, a note on your phone, a whiteboard, whatever works for you. You don't have to solve everything today. You just need to stop carrying it all inside your skull. The moment you externalize the clutter, your mind exhales. It finally has room to focus. And here's something I really want you to hear. Focus is not about willpower. Focus is about environment. If your phone is sitting next to you while you're trying to work, you will check it. Not because you're weak, but because your brain is wired to respond to stimuli. So instead of fighting your nature, design around it. Put the phone in another room. Close the unnecessary tabs. Create a space, even a small one, that signals to your brain, this is where we focus. When your environment supports your intention, focus becomes so much easier. You stop fighting yourself and start flowing. Have you ever experienced that feeling of being completely absorbed in something, where time seems to disappear and you're just in it? That's called a flow state, and it's one of the most productive, most satisfying experiences a human being can have. But flow doesn't happen in chaos. Flow happens when you give one task your undivided attention. One task, not 3, not 7. One. Multitasking is a myth your brain invented to make you feel productive while actually making you less effective. Every time you switch between tasks, your brain pays a switching cost, a little tax on your mental energy. Do it enough times in a day, and you've paid so much tax that there's nothing left for the work that matters. Let me ask you this. What would your life look like if you could focus, truly focus, for even 2 uninterrupted hours a day? Not 8 hours, just 2. Think about what you could build. Think about what you could learn. Think about how much closer you'd be to your goals. Focus isn't about doing more. It's about doing what matters, deeply, fully, without distraction. And the people who master this, even imperfectly, they move through life with a kind of calm efficiency that most people can't even comprehend. Your inner dialogue plays a role here too. If your self-talk is a constant stream of what-ifs and worries and comparisons, that's noise. That's static in the signal. So when you catch your thoughts spiraling, and you will catch them because now you're paying attention, gently redirect. Come back to right now. Come back to this moment. Come back to the task in front of you. It takes practice. It takes patience. But over time, your mind learns to obey. It learns to settle. And a settled mind is a focused mind. A focused mind is a powerful mind. And a powerful mind, well, that's what we're building here, isn't it? Chapter 4. Rewire your thinking before you redesign your life. Okay, let's talk about something that might sting a little bit, but I promise it's going to help. Your current life, the results you're getting right now, the relationships you have, the opportunities you're attracting or missing, all of it is a reflection of your current thinking. Not your circumstances, not your luck, your thinking. I know that's a hard pill to swallow. It was hard for me too the first time I really sat with it. Because it's so much easier to blame the economy or your upbringing or the people around you. But here's the thing. Even if those factors played a role in where you are, your thinking is what determines where you go from here. And that's actually the most empowering realization you can have. Because you can't always change your circumstances, but you can always change the way you think about them. Have you ever noticed how 2 people can go through the exact same experience and come out with completely different outcomes? One person loses a job and spirals into depression. Another person loses the same job and uses it as the push they needed to finally start that business they've been dreaming about. Same event, different thinking, different result. That's not coincidence. That's the power of interpretation. And interpretation is a skill you can develop. It's not something you're born with. It's something you practice. Think of your mind like a pair of glasses. If the lenses are smudged, scratched, foggy, everything you look at appears distorted. Problems look bigger than they are. Opportunities look invisible. The future looks terrifying. But when you clean those lenses, when you upgrade the way you process what you see, the whole world changes. Not because reality changed, but because your perception of reality changed. And perception drives everything. It drives your emotions, your decisions, your confidence, your actions, your entire life trajectory. So how do you actually rewire your thinking? It starts with something I call thought auditing. For the next 24 hours, I want you to pay attention to the thoughts that run through your head. Not judge them, just notice them. You'll be shocked at how many of them are negative, repetitive, and completely automatic. Thoughts like this never works out for me, or I'm not smart enough for this, or what's the point? These thoughts aren't facts. They're habits. They're neural pathways your brain carved through years of repetition. And just like a path through a forest gets wider the more you walk it, these thought patterns get stronger the more you think them. But here's the good news. You can carve new paths. You can create new neural highways that lead to better destinations. When you catch a limiting thought, don't fight it. Don't suppress it. That usually makes it louder. Instead, question it. Is this thought based on evidence or emotion? Is this thought helping me move forward or keeping me stuck? Would I say this to someone I love? That last question is a powerful one, because most of us talk to ourselves in ways we would never talk to a friend. We're our own harshest critics, our own worst bullies, our own most relentless judges. And we wonder why we don't feel confident. You can't build a powerful life while tearing yourself apart on the inside. Once you've questioned the old thought, replace it. Not with something fake or exaggerated, but with something true and constructive. Instead of thinking I can't handle this, try I've handled hard things before and I'm still here. Instead of I'm behind everyone else, try I'm on my own timeline and every step counts. Instead of nothing ever works out, try I haven't found the right approach yet, but I'm learning. Do you feel the difference? These aren't delusions, they're perspectives. And the perspective you choose to operate from determines the altitude of your entire life. Here's something else that's worth saying. Your thinking is heavily influenced by what you consume. And I'm not just talking about food. I'm talking about the conversations you have, the content you watch, the people you spend time with, the ideas you marinate in every single day. If you spend 3 hours a day consuming fear-based news and comparing yourself to highlight reels on social media, your thinking will reflect that. It has to. Your brain is an input-output machine. What goes in eventually comes out. So be ruthlessly intentional about what you allow into your mental space. Curate your inputs the way a chef curates their ingredients. Because the quality of what goes in determines the quality of what comes out. And let me leave you with this thought before we move on. Your thinking doesn't just affect your present, it shapes your future. The thoughts you're thinking right now are building the life you'll be living in a year, in 5 years, in a decade. Every thought is a seed. Plant fear, and you'll harvest hesitation. Plant possibility, and you'll harvest growth. Plant clarity, and you'll harvest direction. You're not just thinking thoughts. You're designing your future with every single one of them. So choose wisely. Choose powerfully. Choose like someone who knows their mind is the most important construction site they'll ever manage. Because it is. Chapter 5. Forge emotional armor without losing your heart. Let's get into something that most self-improvement advice completely gets wrong. Emotions? So many people think that building a strong mind means becoming emotionally numb, that it means shutting down your feelings, putting on a tough face, never letting anything get to you. But that's not strength. That's suppression. And suppression doesn't make you powerful. It makes you a volcano, calm on the surface, building pressure underneath, until one day you erupt in ways you never expected. True emotional power isn't about feeling less. It's about feeling fully while still staying in the driver's seat. Let me ask you something personal. Have you ever said something in anger that you immediately regretted? Something that hurt someone you care about? Something you wished you could take back the second it left your mouth? If you have, you're not alone. That's what happens when emotions drive and logic rides in the back seat. The reaction is instant, automatic, unfiltered. And by the time your rational mind catches up, the damage is already done. That gap, that tiny space between feeling something and acting on it, that's where emotional power lives. And learning to widen that gap, even by a few seconds, can literally change the trajectory of your relationships, your career, and your inner peace. Emotional power starts with something beautifully simple: awareness. Just noticing what you're feeling before it takes over. Most people go from trigger to reaction in a fraction of a second. Something happens, they feel a surge, and they act on it before they even understand what they're feeling. But what if you could slow that down? What if the next time you felt anger rising or anxiety tightening your chest or frustration heating up your face, you just paused, not to suppress it, not to judge it, just to observe it, to say, oh, I'm feeling angry right now. Interesting. That tiny act of observation creates distance between you and the emotion, and in that distance, you find something priceless. Choice. The choice to respond instead of react. Now, here's something I think you'll find fascinating. Your emotions are often responding to your interpretation of a situation, not the situation itself. Someone doesn't text you back. One person thinks they're being ignored and feels rejected. Another person thinks, oh, they must be busy, and feels nothing. Same situation. Completely different emotional experience. Why? Because the emotion followed the story, not the facts. And once you understand this, you gain an incredible superpower. You can change the story, not to deny reality, but to choose a narrative that serves you instead of one that destroys you. Have you ever gone through something really difficult and then looked back months later and thought, honestly, that was one of the best things that ever happened to me? That's a reframe. And what most people don't realize is that you don't have to wait months to do it. You can practice reframing in real time. When something goes wrong, instead of automatically jumping to, this is terrible, ask yourself, what might I gain from this? What is this teaching me? How might this be shaping me into someone stronger? These questions don't erase the pain, but they redirect it. They transform raw emotional energy into something you can actually use. Let's talk about emotional triggers for a moment. We all have them. A certain tone of voice, a specific type of criticism, a memory that still stings. These triggers aren't weaknesses, they're signposts. They're pointing directly at the areas where your emotional work needs to happen. Instead of running from them or pretending they don't exist, get curious about them. Ask yourself, why does this affect me so deeply? What old wound is this touching? What belief is being activated? When you investigate your triggers with compassion instead of judgment, they start losing their power over you. They go from being landmines to being lessons. And let me tell you something that might change how you think about emotional responsibility. Nobody makes you feel anything. I know, that sounds harsh. But stay with me. People can say things, people can do things. But the feeling, the emotional response that follows, that's generated inside you. And that means you have more control over your emotional world than you've been led to believe. This isn't about blaming yourself for feeling hurt. It's about recognizing that your emotional state is ultimately your territory. You get to tend to it. You get to guard it. You get to decide what gets planted there and what gets pulled out. One of the most powerful emotional skills you can develop is the ability to sit with discomfort without needing to fix it immediately. We live in a culture that runs from discomfort at lightning speed. Feel sad, distract yourself. Feel anxious, scroll through your phone. Feel lonely, fill the silence with noise. But every time you run from discomfort, you teach your brain that discomfort is dangerous. And it's not. Discomfort is just information. It's your mind and body telling you something needs attention. So instead of running, sit with it. Breathe through it. Let it be there without needing to make it go away. And you'll discover something remarkable. It passes. It always passes. And on the other side of it, you're stronger than you were before. Emotional power also means knowing when to step back. Not every battle deserves your energy. Not every comment deserves a response. Not every situation requires you to engage. Sometimes the most emotionally powerful thing you can do is walk away, not because you're weak, but because you're wise enough to know that your peace is worth more than being right. That takes real strength. The kind of strength that doesn't need to prove itself. The kind that sits quietly, confidently, unshakably in its own center. Here's what I want you to walk away from this chapter understanding. You are not your emotions. You experience emotions, but they don't define you. They don't have to control you. They don't get the final say in how you show up in the world. When you learn to feel deeply without drowning, when you learn to process without projecting, when you learn to respond with intention instead of reacting from impulse, you become emotionally invincible. Not because nothing hurts, but because nothing controls you. And that, my friend, is one of the most liberating feelings you will ever experience. It's the kind of freedom that doesn't come from outside circumstances. It comes from inside, from the mind we're building together, one chapter, one lesson, one breath at a time. Chapter 6. Dare to think for yourself in a world that wants you to follow. Can I ask you something that might feel a little uncomfortable? How many of the opinions you hold right now are actually yours. Like genuinely yours. Not something you heard on a podcast and absorbed. Not something your parents told you when you were 12 that you never questioned. Not something everyone around you seems to believe, so you just went along with it. How many of your beliefs did you actually sit down, examine carefully, and consciously choose? If you're being honest, probably fewer than you'd like to admit. And that's not your fault. We're raised in a world that rewards agreement and punishes deviation. From the moment we enter school, we're taught to follow instructions, memorize the right answers, and stay inside the lines. And for a while, that works. It keeps things orderly. It keeps things predictable. But at some point, staying inside the lines stops being safe and starts becoming a cage. Here's the thing about independent thinking. It's terrifying. And I don't say that lightly. When you start thinking for yourself, really thinking, you realize that some of the beliefs you've been carrying don't actually belong to you. And letting go of borrowed beliefs feels like losing a part of your identity. Because, in a way, it is. You're shedding the version of yourself that was built on other people's expectations. And what's left can feel raw, exposed, uncertain. But that uncertainty, that's the beginning of freedom. Real freedom. The kind that doesn't come from doing whatever you want, but from knowing why you do what you do. Have you ever had an idea, a genuine spark of insight, and then immediately talked yourself out of it because you thought no one else would agree? Maybe it was a business idea. Maybe it was a different way of approaching a relationship. Maybe it was a life decision that made perfect sense to you, but seemed crazy to everyone else. And so you buried it. You swallowed it. You chose the safe, socially acceptable path instead. How many of those buried ideas could have changed your life if you'd had the courage to follow them? Independent thinking doesn't mean you reject everyone else's opinions. That's not independence. That's stubbornness. True independent thinking means you evaluate ideas instead of automatically absorbing them. You listen to advice, but you don't outsource your judgment. You consider different perspectives, but you make your own conclusions. You remain open-minded, but you stay self-directed. Think of it like being a chef instead of just a customer at a buffet. A customer takes whatever's available. A chef examines the ingredients, understands the flavors, and creates something intentional. Your mind should work the same way. Don't just consume ideas. Curate them, combine them, create something that's genuinely yours. One of the most powerful habits you can build is asking better questions. Most people accept what they see at face value, but independent thinkers dig. They ask why. They ask, what if? They ask, is there another way to look at this? They ask, what evidence actually supports this belief? Questions are the tools that separate followers from leaders. Questions open doors that obedience keeps locked. And the more you practice questioning, not aggressively but curiously, the sharper your mind becomes. Now let me be honest about something. Thinking independently comes with a social cost. When you stop agreeing with everyone, some people get uncomfortable. When you challenge popular opinions, some people push back. When you make decisions that don't follow the script everyone else is reading from, some people question your judgment. And that's where courage enters the picture, because independent thinking without courage is just private daydreaming. You have to be willing to stand behind your thoughts even when the crowd moves in a different direction. You have to be willing to walk a path that doesn't have footprints on it yet. That takes guts. That takes conviction. That takes the kind of inner strength that only comes from trusting your own mind. And here's what I want you to remember. Every person who ever built something extraordinary did so by thinking differently than the people around them. Every breakthrough, every innovation, every revolution started with someone who looked at the world and said, I see something nobody else sees yet. And they moved toward that vision before anyone validated it, before anyone clapped, before anyone believed. They believed first, and eventually the world caught up. You have thoughts inside you that matter, insights that are worth exploring, ideas that deserve space to grow. Don't bury them because they're unconventional. Don't silence them because they make other people uncomfortable. The world doesn't need another copy. It needs original thinkers. It needs people who are brave enough to trust their own minds. And you, whether you realize it yet or not, are becoming one of those people. Solitude helps with this, by the way. Spending time alone with your thoughts, without the influence of social media, without the background noise of everyone else's opinions, that's where your deepest clarity lives. Solitude isn't loneliness. Loneliness is the absence of connection. Solitude is the presence of yourself. And when you spend quality time with your own mind, you start hearing your own voice more clearly. You start understanding what you truly believe, what you truly value, and what direction truly feels right for you. Not right for the crowd, right for you. Chapter 7. Make discipline your closest ally, not your enemy. Let me tell you something that might completely shift the way you think about discipline. Most people treat discipline like punishment, like something that takes away their freedom, like a strict parent standing over them saying, you have to do this whether you like it or not. And honestly, if that's how you see discipline, no wonder it feels exhausting. No wonder you resist it. No wonder it never sticks. But what if I told you that discipline isn't the opposite of freedom? What if I told you that discipline is the doorway to freedom? That the most free, the most empowered, the most in control people you've ever seen got there not by doing whatever they felt like, but by doing what mattered most, consistently, even when they didn't feel like it? Have you ever met someone who just seems to have their life together? Not perfect, but organized. Not robotic, but reliable. They show up. They follow through. They don't make excuses. And you look at them and think, they must have been born with some kind of superhuman willpower. But here's the secret nobody tells you. They weren't born with more willpower than you. They just built better systems. They designed their daily life in a way that makes the right choices easier and the wrong choices harder. They don't rely on motivation because they know motivation is a guest that shows up unannounced and leaves without saying goodbye. They rely on structure, and structure, my friend, is the skeleton that discipline grows around. Let me break this down into something real. Discipline is nothing more than a collection of small promises you keep with yourself. That's it. Wake up when you said you would. Do the thing you committed to doing. Follow through on the plan you made when you were feeling clear-headed. Each one of those promises is tiny, almost insignificant on its own, but stacked together day after day, week after week, they create something enormous. They create self-trust, and self-trust is the foundation of everything. When you trust yourself to follow through, your confidence rises. When your confidence rises, your actions become bolder. When your actions become bolder, your results improve, and suddenly you're living a life that the old you wouldn't even recognize. But here's where most people stumble. They think discipline means perfection. They start strong, miss one day, and feel like the whole thing is ruined. They think because they skipped a workout or broke a commitment that they've failed. And that feeling of failure makes them quit entirely. But discipline isn't about never falling. Discipline is about how fast you get back up. It's about returning to the path without drama, without shame, without turning one missed day into a missed month. The ability to restart quickly is worth more than the ability to never fail. Because you will fail. Everyone does. But not everyone gets back up. The ones who do, they're the ones who build something lasting. Let me ask you something. What's one thing you've been putting off? Not a big, dramatic, life-altering thing, just one small task that you know you should do but keep avoiding. Maybe it's organizing your workspace. Maybe it's sending that email. Maybe it's starting that project. Whatever it is, I want you to notice the resistance you feel around it. That resistance, that's your undisciplined mind negotiating with you. It's saying, not now. It's saying, maybe later. It's saying, you don't have to do this today. And every time you listen to that negotiation, you weaken your discipline muscle. But every time you override it, even once, you strengthen it. So here's a rule that might change your life. When you decide to do something, remove the negotiation. Don't debate it. Don't discuss it with yourself. Just do it. The decision was already made. The debate is over. Another thing that makes discipline feel impossible is starting too big. People go from zero to everything overnight and then wonder why they burn out by Thursday. You don't train for a marathon by running 20 miles on day one. You start with 1, then 2, then 3. Discipline grows the same way. Want to read more? Start with 3 pages. Want to exercise? Start with 7 minutes. Want to meditate? Start with 60 seconds. Yes, 60 seconds. It sounds ridiculous, but that's the point. The goal isn't to impress yourself. The goal is to build the habit. And once the habit is installed, once the neural pathway is carved, you naturally expand. You go from 3 pages to 10, from 7 minutes to 30, from 60 seconds to 10 minutes. Small beginnings create sustainable growth. Big beginnings create spectacular burnouts. And here's the part that I think will excite you the most. Discipline gives you identity power. When you consistently act with discipline, you start seeing yourself differently. You start saying, I'm the kind of person who follows through, not because someone told you that, because you proved it to yourself. And identity-driven behavior is the most powerful force in human psychology. When you believe you're disciplined, you act with discipline automatically. It stops being a battle and starts being an expression of who you are. And that shift from fighting for discipline to living with discipline, that's when your life truly transforms. Discipline also creates something most people desperately want but rarely achieve: peace of mind. When you're disciplined, you're not scrambling. You're not behind. You're not drowning in guilt over things you should have done. You're in control. And that sense of control brings a calm that no amount of motivation or inspiration can match. Discipline isn't a cage. Discipline is the key that opens the cage. Chapter 8. Guard what enters your mind, like your future depends on it, because it does. Your mind is always consuming something. Right now, even as you listen to these words, your brain is absorbing, processing, filing, and what it absorbs shapes how it performs. It shapes how you think, how you feel, how you decide, how you show up in the world. Your mind is, in the most literal sense, a product of its inputs. So let me ask you this. If your mind is a product of what it consumes, what have you been feeding it lately? I want you to think about your average day. From the moment you wake up to the moment you close your eyes at night, what enters your mind? Is it carefully selected? Is it nourishing? Is it pushing you toward the person you want to become? Or is it random, chaotic, low quality? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people feed their minds the mental equivalent of junk food. They wake up and immediately check their phone. Headlines designed to trigger fear. Social media designed to trigger comparison. Messages designed to trigger obligation. Before they've even brushed their teeth, their mind has already consumed a dozen things that drain their clarity, their peace, and their focus. And then they wonder why they feel overwhelmed by lunchtime. Does that sound like you? Even a little bit? If it does, don't worry. That's exactly why we're here. Think of your mind like a garden, a beautiful, fertile garden with incredible potential. But a garden doesn't care what you plant in it. It will grow weeds just as enthusiastically as it grows roses. If you throw seeds of negativity, worry, comparison, and distraction into that garden, it will grow those things with full force. But if you plant seeds of wisdom, curiosity, growth, and purpose, it will grow those with equal force. The garden doesn't judge. It just grows whatever it's given. Your job, your responsibility, is to become a ruthless gardener. Pull the weeds. Plant with intention. Protect the soil. Because that garden is producing the thoughts that create your life. One of the most powerful ways to upgrade your mental diet is through reading. And I don't mean scrolling through headlines or skimming social media captions. I mean sitting down with a book that challenges you, a book that introduces you to ideas you've never considered, a book that makes you think differently about yourself and the world, even 15 minutes a day. That's all it takes to start shifting the quality of your mental input. Books on human behavior, on mindset, on philosophy, on leadership, on emotional intelligence. These aren't just information. They're mental nutrition. They strengthen the architecture of your thinking in ways that casual consumption never can. But it's not just about what you read. It's about who you listen to. The conversations you have every day are shaping your mind more than you realize. If you spend your time around people who complain constantly, who gossip, who see the worst in everything, that energy seeps into your thinking. It's subtle. You don't even notice it happening. But over weeks and months, you start thinking like them. You start adopting their vocabulary, their outlook, their limitations. On the other hand, if you surround yourself with people who think expansively, who challenge you to grow, who see possibilities instead of problems, your mind rises to meet that standard. You start thinking bigger. You start expecting more from yourself. You start believing in things you once thought were impossible. Your circle is not just a social choice. It's a mental health decision. Let me tell you something. I wish someone had told me years ago, You don't have to consume everything the world throws at you. You are allowed to be selective. You are allowed to unfollow. You are allowed to turn off notifications. You are allowed to leave conversations that drain you. You are allowed to close the browser tab. You are allowed to protect your mental space the same way you'd protect your home. You wouldn't let a stranger walk into your house and start rearranging your furniture, would you? Then why do you let random content walk into your mind and rearrange your thoughts? Here's another piece of this puzzle that often gets overlooked. Inspiration matters. Logic builds the framework of your thinking, but inspiration fuels it. A powerful speech, a story of someone overcoming the impossible, a conversation that sparks something deep inside you, these are high-octane fuel for your mind. They reconnect you with your purpose. They reignite your motivation when it starts to dim. They remind you why you're doing this work in the first place. So seek out inspiration intentionally. Don't wait for it to stumble across your feed. Hunt for it. Bookmark it. Return to it when you need a lift. Treat inspiration as a tool, not a luxury. And here's the transformation I want you to look forward to. The more you feed your mind high-quality input, the less tolerance you'll have for low-quality input. Your mental palate changes. Shallow content stops satisfying you. Gossip starts feeling like a waste of time. Drama starts feeling exhausting instead of entertaining. You'll find yourself craving depth, substance, meaning. And when that shift happens, when you start naturally gravitating toward what nourishes you and naturally repelling what doesn't, that's when you know your mind is evolving. That's when you know the upgrade is working. Imagine your mind a year from now, fed daily with ideas that stretch you, conversations that sharpen you, books that expand you, and inspiration that moves you. Imagine the clarity. Imagine the confidence. Imagine the decisions you'd make from that place. That's not a fantasy. That's a future you can build starting today. Starting right now. Starting with the next thing you choose to let into your mind. Choose wisely. Your future self is counting on it. Chapter 9. Zoom out and start playing the long game. Let me ask you a question that might change the way you look at everything. Where do you want to be in 10 years? Not tomorrow. Not next month. 10 years. Can you picture it? Can you see the person you want to become, the life you want to live, the impact you want to have? Most people can't. And that's not because they lack ambition. It's because they've been conditioned to think in deadlines and quarters and weekends and paycheck cycles. They're so focused on surviving this week that they never stop to think about designing this decade. And that short-term lens, as natural as it feels, is quietly sabotaging everything they're trying to build. Here's what short-term thinking does to you. It makes you impatient. It makes you reactive. It makes you quit things 3 months in because you haven't seen dramatic results yet. It makes you jump from goal to goal, strategy to strategy, idea to idea, always chasing the thing that promises faster outcomes. And the irony is that constant chasing is actually slowing you down. You're spending so much energy switching directions that you never build momentum in any single direction. It's like digging 10 shallow holes instead of one deep well. You end up exhausted and thirsty. But when you zoom out, when you stretch your thinking across 5, 10, 20 years, something magical happens. The pressure drops, not because you stop caring, but because you stop panicking. You realize that one bad week doesn't define your journey. One failed attempt doesn't erase your progress. One slow season doesn't mean the whole garden is dead. It just means the roots are still growing underground where nobody can see them. Have you ever planted something and watched the soil for days, waiting for a sprout to appear? Nothing happens for what feels like forever. And right when you're about to give up, a tiny green shoot breaks through. That's how growth works. Most of it is invisible. Most of it happens in the dark. And the only people who get to see the bloom are the ones who had the patience to keep watering. Think about anything meaningful you've ever accomplished. Learning to drive, getting through school, building a friendship that matters. None of those things happened overnight. They all required sustained effort over time. So why do we expect our biggest goals, the ones that matter most, to happen any faster? We don't need more speed. We need more stamina. We don't need shortcuts. We need staying power. We don't need louder motivation. We need quieter patience. Long-term thinking changes how you handle setbacks, too. When you're thinking short-term, every obstacle feels catastrophic. You lose a client, and it feels like your career is over. You have a bad conversation, and it feels like the relationship is ruined. You miss a deadline, and it feels like proof that you're a failure. But when you think in decades, setbacks shrink to their actual size. They become scenes in a much longer movie. They become paragraphs in a much bigger story. You can absorb them, learn from them, and keep moving because you know that one rough chapter doesn't determine the ending. And here's something that I think you'll find really liberating. Long-term thinking protects you from the most destructive habit of them all: comparison. When you're playing the short game, you can't help but look sideways. You see someone your age achieving something you haven't achieved yet, and it stings. You see someone starting a business, getting promoted, traveling the world, and you think, why not me? But when you zoom out, you realize something crucial. You're not in the same movie. You're not in the same chapter. You're not even reading the same script. Their timeline has nothing to do with yours. And comparing your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel is like comparing a seed to a tree and feeling ashamed that you haven't grown leaves yet. Give yourself time. Give yourself grace. Give yourself permission to grow at your own pace. So how do you actually install this long-term mindset into your daily life? You start by asking yourself better questions. Instead of asking, what can I achieve this week? Ask, what kind of person do I want to be in 5 years? Instead of asking, how do I get results fast? Ask what habits will compound into something extraordinary over time. Instead of asking, why isn't this working yet? Ask, what am I building that my future self will be grateful for? These questions shift your focus from speed to direction. And direction is infinitely more important than speed. A person walking slowly in the right direction will always outpace a person sprinting in circles. Then align your daily actions with those long-term answers. You don't need to make huge moves. You need to make consistent ones. Read a few pages every day. Practice your craft every day. Take one small step toward your goal every day. These actions feel tiny in the moment, but they compound, they accumulate, they stack. And one day you look up and realize the mountain you thought was impossibly tall is now behind you. Not because you made a dramatic leap, but because you took 1,000 small steps. And you never stopped. One more thing before we move on. Long-term thinking doesn't mean you ignore the present. It means you give the present more meaning. When you know that today's discipline is building tomorrow's freedom, every small act becomes significant. When you know that this morning's workout is contributing to a decade of health, the effort feels worthwhile. When you know that this conversation, this book, this moment of silence is shaping who you'll be in 10 years, you stop rushing through life and start living it with purpose. The present becomes richer because the future gives it context. And that's the gift of thinking long. You don't lose today. You make today matter more. Chapter 10. Master the art of saying not yet instead of why not. There's a moment that happens probably a dozen times a day that most people don't even notice. A moment where your brain presents you with two doors. Behind door number one is the thing that feels good right now. The scroll, the snack, the distraction, the shortcut, the easy way out. Behind door number two is the thing that's harder right now, but better later. The task you've been avoiding. The workout you don't feel like doing. The difficult conversation you need to have. The work that requires your full attention. And in that tiny moment, the choice you make determines the direction of your entire life. Not dramatically, not in one big sweep, but quietly, invisibly, like water carving through stone, drop by drop, choice by choice. That's what self-control really is. It's not some mystical superpower that certain people are born with. It's a muscle, a mental muscle that gets stronger every time you choose door number two. And here's the part that nobody talks about. It doesn't have to feel heroic. It just has to happen. You don't have to conquer every temptation with a warrior cry. Sometimes, self-control looks like quietly putting your phone face down and turning back to your work. Sometimes it looks like taking a breath before responding to something that made you angry. Sometimes it looks like going to bed instead of watching one more episode. These aren't big moments, but they're the moments that build a big life. Have you ever noticed how the things that feel best in the moment often feel worst in hindsight? And the things that feel hardest in the moment often feel best in hindsight. That's the delayed gratification paradox. Your brain is wired to prioritize immediate reward. It's a survival mechanism from thousands of years ago when humans needed to eat the food in front of them because there might not be food tomorrow. But you're not in survival mode anymore. You're in building mode. And building mode requires a different operating system. One that can override the ancient programming and say, I see the reward in front of me, and I choose to wait for the bigger one down the road. Let me make this practical. The next time you feel an impulse pulling you toward the easy choice, try asking yourself 3 simple questions. Will this matter in an hour? Will this matter tomorrow? Will this matter in a year? Those 3 questions are like a circuit breaker for impulsive behavior. They snap you out of the emotional moment and reconnect you with your long-term identity. Because impulses are loud, but short-lived. Purpose is quiet, but permanent. And when you learn to listen to purpose instead of impulse, you step into a version of yourself that most people never access. Here's something else I want you to understand about delayed gratification. It's not about denying yourself joy. That's a common misconception that makes self-control feel miserable. Delayed gratification is actually about choosing better joy, deeper joy, more meaningful joy. The joy of finishing something you started, The joy of seeing your body get stronger over months of consistent training. The joy of watching your skills improve because you put in the work when nobody was watching. The joy of trusting yourself because you've proven again and again that you can resist the easy path and choose the meaningful one. That kind of joy doesn't fade in 30 seconds like the dopamine hit from a notification. That kind of joy stays, it builds, it becomes part of who you are. Self-control also builds something that I think is wildly underrated: self-respect. Think about how you feel about yourself after a day where you gave in to every impulse versus a day where you showed up with discipline and intention. The difference is enormous. On the impulsive day, you feel foggy, guilty, behind. On the disciplined day, you feel clear, proud, ahead. That feeling of self-respect compounds over time, just like everything else we've been talking about. And eventually, you start making better choices, not because you're forcing yourself, but because you respect yourself too much to settle for less. Let me leave you with this image. Imagine two versions of yourself standing side by side 1 year from now. One version chose instant gratification at every turn. They scrolled when they should have worked. They slept in when they planned to wake up early. They avoided discomfort at every opportunity. The other version practiced self-control. They did the hard thing when it mattered. They delayed the reward when it counted. They chose growth over comfort again and again and again. Now look at those two versions. Which one has the life you want? Which one has the confidence you want? Which one has the mind you want? You already know the answer, and every single choice you make from this moment forward is a vote for which version becomes real. Chapter 11. Build real confidence by becoming someone you can count on. Let's talk about confidence. Real confidence. Not the kind you see performed on social media, the flexing, the bragging, the look-at-me energy that disappears the moment the camera turns off. I'm talking about the kind of confidence that sits in your chest like a warm fire. The kind you feel when you walk into a room and you don't need anyone to validate you because you've already validated yourself. The kind that doesn't get louder when challenged, but gets steadier. That kind of confidence is rare, and it's rare because most people are looking for it in all the wrong places. Let me ask you something. Where do you look for confidence? Do you look for it in compliments, in likes, in someone telling you you're doing great? If you do, I get it. It feels good to be recognized. Now, but here's the problem with externally sourced confidence. It's borrowed. It's temporary. It's dependent on other people continuing to feed it. And the moment the compliments stop, the moment the approval dries up, the confidence collapses. You're left standing in the wreckage of someone else's opinion, wondering who you even are without their validation. That's not confidence. That's dependency wearing a confidence costume. Real confidence is built from the inside, and it starts with one word: competence. Competence means you've put in the work. You've practiced, you've struggled, you've failed, you've adjusted, you've tried again. And through that process, you've built genuine ability. Not the illusion of ability, actual tested, proven ability. And when you know deep in your bones that you can handle something because you've handled it before, that's where unshakable confidence lives. It lives in evidence, not in hope. Think about the moments in your life when you felt most confident. Really think about them. Were they moments when someone complimented you? Probably not. They were probably moments when you accomplished something difficult. When you solved a problem you weren't sure you could solve. When you stood up for yourself in a situation that scared you. When you pushed through something that tested every ounce of your strength. Those moments created confidence because they created proof. Proof that you're capable. Proof that you can rely on yourself. And that proof is yours forever. Nobody can take it away. No criticism can erase it. No failure can delete it, because it's burned into your experience. So how do you build this kind of confidence deliberately? It happens in 3 stages. First, you learn, you absorb knowledge, you study, you observe, you build a foundation of understanding. But, and this is important, learning alone doesn't create confidence. You can read 100 books about swimming and still feel terrified standing at the edge of the pool. Learning is necessary, but it's not sufficient. The second stage is practice. This is where most people stop. And ironically, this is where confidence actually begins. Practice means getting your hands dirty. Practice means making mistakes and learning from them. Practice means doing the thing imperfectly, repeatedly, until the imperfections start smoothing out. Every hour of practice deposits a coin in your confidence account. It might not feel like much at the time, but those coins add up. The third stage is application. This is where you take what you've learned and practiced and use it in a real world. You step into the arena. You apply the skill when it actually matters. And every time you do, you close the loop between effort and self-belief. You prove to yourself, not in theory, but in practice, that you can handle it. And that proof rewires your identity. You go from someone who hopes they can handle challenges to someone who knows they can. That shift is everything. Let me tell you something else that's crucial. Confidence grows faster when you focus on one thing at a time. Trying to become good at everything simultaneously is a recipe for mediocrity and self-doubt. But when you choose one area, one skill, one domain, and you pour your focused energy into it, you improve quickly. Quick improvement builds quick competence. Quick competence builds quick confidence. Depth beats breadth when it comes to building genuine self-belief. And here's a piece of the confidence puzzle that people rarely talk about. Keeping promises to yourself. Every time you say you'll do something and you actually do it, you build self-trust. And self-trust is the bedrock of confidence. But every time you break a promise to yourself, even a small one, you chip away at that foundation. You teach your brain that your word doesn't mean anything. And if your own word doesn't mean anything to you, how can you possibly feel confident? So start small. Make a tiny promise, keep it. Make another, keep that one too. Stack those kept promises day after day and watch what happens to your confidence. It doesn't just grow. It becomes a part of you. One more thing I want to address. Stop comparing yourself to other people as a measure of confidence. Comparison is the fastest way to destroy the confidence you've worked so hard to build. Because there will always be someone further along. Always. And if your confidence depends on being ahead of everyone else, you'll never feel secure. Real confidence isn't measured against others. It's measured against your former self. Are you better than you were last month? Are you braver than you were last year? Are you more skilled than you were when you started? If the answer is yes, you're winning. Full stop. Confidence isn't about being the best. It's about being better. And better is always available to you, no matter where you are right now. You are building something real here, not a performance, not an act, not a mask you put on when you walk out the door. You're building the quiet, deep, unmovable confidence that comes from knowing you can count on yourself. And that, more than anything else, is what will carry you through whatever comes next. Because life will throw things at you. It always does. But when you've built real confidence through real competence, you don't flinch. You don't freeze. You breathe, you step forward, and you handle it. Because you've trained for this. Because you've prepared for this. Because you've become someone you can count on. And there's nothing in this world more powerful than that. Chapter 12. Become the quietest and most dangerous person in the room. And by dangerous, I don't mean threatening. I mean effective. I mean sharp. I mean the kind of person who doesn't need to announce their presence because their presence announces itself. There's a version of strength that most people never develop because it doesn't look like what they've been taught strength should look like. It's not loud. It's not flashy. It doesn't argue. It doesn't compete for attention. It simply observes, processes, and moves with precision. And that version of strength is built on 3 skills that almost nobody talks about: silence, observation, and strategy. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a meeting, a conversation, or even an argument where the person who said the least ended up having the most impact? They sat quietly while everyone else was talking over each other, jockeying for position, filling the air with opinions. And then, when they finally spoke, everyone stopped and listened, not because they were the loudest, but because they were the most intentional. Their words carried weight because they chose them carefully. Their perspective was clear because they took time to actually think before opening their mouth. That's the power of silence. And it's a power that most people give away every single day by talking too much, reacting too fast, and filling every gap with noise. Here's something I've noticed about the most successful people I've studied. They're not the ones who talk the most. They're the ones who listen the most. They ask a question, and then they actually pay attention to the answer. They enter a room, and their first instinct isn't to perform. It's to absorb. They're gathering information while everyone else is spending it. And by the time they act, they've already mapped the terrain. They know what matters. They know what doesn't. They know where the opportunity is and where the danger is. That's observation, and it's one of the most undervalued skills in existence. Can I be honest with you about something? We live in a world that rewards noise. Social media rewards the loudest voice. The workplace often rewards the most visible person. Conversations reward the quickest response. And because of that, we've been trained to believe that silence equals weakness, that observation equals passivity, that thinking before acting equals hesitation. But that's completely backwards. Silence isn't weakness. Silence is patience loaded with awareness. Observation isn't passivity. Observation is intelligence gathering in real time. And thinking before acting isn't hesitation. It's wisdom. The world punishes impulsive mistakes far more than it punishes thoughtful pauses. Let's talk about silence specifically for a moment. Most people are uncomfortable with silence because silence forces them to sit with themselves. No performance, no distraction, no script to follow, just raw, unfiltered presence. And for a mind that's used to constant stimulation, that feels threatening. But the thing most people don't realize is that silence is where your deepest clarity lives. When you stop talking, you start hearing. Not just other people, but yourself, your intuition, your instincts, the quiet signals your mind has been sending you that you've been too noisy to receive. Some of the best decisions you'll ever make will come from moments of silence, not from brainstorming sessions, not from heated debates, from quiet, still, undistracted reflection. Now let's talk about observation. Observation is the art of paying attention to what's actually happening, instead of what you assume is happening. Most people walk through life on autopilot. They see what they expect to see. They hear what they expect to hear. They interact with the world through a filter of assumptions and biases and habits. But a trained observer sees beneath the surface. They notice the body language that contradicts the words. They notice the pattern that everyone else missed. They notice the shift in energy that signals something important is about to happen. Observation isn't about being suspicious or paranoid. It's about being present. Fully, completely, intentionally present. And presence is a superpower in a world where almost nobody is paying real attention. Have you ever had a gut feeling about a situation that turned out to be exactly right? That wasn't magic. That was your subconscious mind processing observations you didn't even realize you were making. Your brain was picking up on micro signals, tiny pieces of data that your conscious mind overlooked, and it assembled them into a feeling. When you train yourself to observe deliberately, you strengthen that ability. You start catching things sooner. You start understanding people faster. You start reading situations with a clarity that feels almost unfair. Not because you're smarter than everyone else, but because you're paying more attention than everyone else. And then there's strategy. Strategy is what ties silence and observation together into something actionable. It's the bridge between understanding and execution. A strategic mind doesn't just react to whatever's in front of it. It considers the options. It weighs the consequences. It thinks 2, 3, 5 moves ahead. It asks not just what should I do, but what's the smartest thing to do, given everything I know. Strategy turns effort into efficiency. It turns hard work into smart work. It turns random action into directed progress. Here's something powerful I want you to try. The next time you're in a conversation, a meeting, or even a social gathering, practice being the observer instead of the performer. Don't rush to fill silences. Don't jump to share your opinion first. Just watch. Listen. Take in the dynamics. Notice who's trying to dominate. Notice who's being overlooked. Notice what's being said and what's being avoided. You'll be amazed at how much information is available when you stop trying to broadcast and start trying to receive. And when you do speak, when you do act, it'll be from a place of understanding instead of assumption, from strategy instead of impulse, from clarity instead of chaos. The combination of silence, observation, and strategy creates something I can only describe as quiet authority. You don't demand respect. You earn it through presence. You don't chase influence. You attract it through awareness. You don't need to be the center of attention. You become the center of gravity. People begin to trust your judgment because they sense that your decisions aren't reckless. They're considered. They're grounded. They're intentional. And that kind of trust, the kind that's earned through quiet competence rather than loud performance, is the most durable kind there is. Chapter 13. Let the hard times make you harder to break. I wish I could tell you that building a superhuman mind means you'll never face hardship again. I wish I could promise that once you've done all this inner work, life will be smooth sailing from here on out. But we both know that's not how it works. Life is going to hit you hard, probably when you least expect it. You're going to face losses you didn't see coming, setbacks that feel completely unfair, moments where the ground shifts beneath your feet and everything you thought was solid suddenly isn't. That's not pessimism. That's reality. And the question isn't whether difficulty will come. The question is what it will do to you when it arrives. Most people break. I don't say that to be cruel. I say it because I've seen it happen, and I've felt it happen in my own life. When the pressure gets intense enough, most people crack. They lose confidence. They lose direction. They lose the version of themselves they worked so hard to build. And they retreat into old patterns, old habits, old identities, because the familiar feels safe when the world feels threatening. But there's another option, an option that very few people choose, not because they can't, but because they don't know it's available to them. And that option is this. You can become anti-fragile. You can become the kind of person who doesn't just survive difficulty, but actually gets stronger because of it. Have you ever heard of a blacksmith forging a sword? The metal doesn't become strong by sitting in a comfortable room. It becomes strong by being thrown into fire, hammered repeatedly, and cooled under pressure. That process, the heat, the impact, the stress, that's what transforms a soft piece of metal into something sharp, resilient, and powerful. Your mind works the same way. The challenges you face aren't just obstacles. They're the fire that forges you. The setbacks aren't just inconveniences. They're the hammer that shapes you. And every single time you endure something difficult and come out the other side still standing, you become harder to break. But here's the key. Becoming anti-fragile doesn't happen automatically. Just because life hits you doesn't mean you'll grow from it. Growth requires a conscious choice. When something goes wrong, you have two paths. Path one is collapse, blame, bitterness, victim mentality, self-pity. That path is easier in the moment, and honestly, sometimes it's tempting, but it leads nowhere good. Path two is reflection, learning, adaptation, asking, what is this experience teaching me? How can I use this to become stronger? What did I just discover about myself that I didn't know before? Path two is harder. It requires honesty and humility. But path two is where transformation lives. Let me ask you something personal. Think about the hardest thing you've ever been through, the thing that felt like it might crush you. Are you still here? You are. You survived it. And I'd be willing to bet that it taught you something important about who you are and what you're capable of handling. Maybe you didn't see it at the time. Maybe you were too deep in the pain to recognize the growth. But looking back now, can you see how that experience shaped you? Can you see how it gave you a kind of strength that nothing else could have given you? That's the anti-fragile effect. That's difficulty doing its hidden work, not breaking you, but building you. One of the most important shifts you can make is changing how you interpret struggle. Most people see struggle as evidence that something is going wrong. But what if struggle is actually evidence that something is going right? What if the resistance you're feeling is proof that you're pushing beyond your current limits? What if the discomfort is your mind and body adapting to a new level? Athletes understand this. The burn in the gym isn't damage, it's growth. The exhaustion after a hard run isn't failure, it's conditioning. Your mind works the same way. The mental discomfort you feel when you're facing something hard isn't a sign to stop. It's a sign that you're getting stronger. Another essential part of becoming anti-fragile is learning to stay calm under pressure, not numb. Calm. There's a difference. Numb means you've shut down. Calm means you're fully present, but not reactive. When chaos erupts around you, most people either freeze or explode. But an anti-fragile mind takes a breath. It assesses. It chooses a response instead of defaulting to a reaction. That composure, those few seconds of steadiness in the middle of a storm, can change the entire outcome of a situation. And the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. Composure isn't a personality trait, it's a skill. And like all skills, it grows with repetition. Adaptability matters too. Rigid things break. Flexible things bend and bounce back. If your plan falls apart, can you make a new one? If your expectations aren't met, can you adjust without collapsing? If life takes you in a direction you didn't expect, can you navigate it with curiosity instead of panic? The ability to pivot, to adjust, to flow with what's happening instead of resisting it, that's anti-fragility in action. You don't fight the wave, you ride it. You don't argue with reality, you work with it. And in that flexibility, you find a strength that rigid people never discover. Here's what I want you to carry with you from this chapter. You are not fragile. You might feel fragile sometimes. You might feel like one more hit will be the one that finally breaks you, but it won't, because you've already survived things you once thought were unsurvivable. You've already endured things you once thought were unendurable. And every one of those experiences, whether you realized it or not, added something to you. They made you deeper. They made you wiser. They made you harder to break. Trust that. Lean into that. And the next time life throws something heavy at you, instead of asking, why me? Try saying, try me. Because you can handle it. You've already proven that. Chapter 14. Rewrite the voice inside your head. Let's talk about the most important conversation you'll ever have. Not with your boss, not with your partner, not with your best friend. The most important conversation you'll ever have is the one happening right now inside your own head. The running dialogue, the constant narration, the voice that comments on everything you do, everything you try, everything you dream about. That voice, your inner voice, is either your greatest ally or your most relentless saboteur. And for most people, unfortunately, it's the saboteur. Have you ever paid attention to how you talk to yourself? Like really listened? Not the motivational phrases you post on social media. The actual words that run through your mind when you're alone, when you're struggling, when you're scared. For a lot of people, that voice is brutal. It says, you're not smart enough. It says, you'll probably fail. It says, who do you think you are to want something that big? It says, remember last time you tried something like this? Remember how that went? And the worst part is, most people don't even realize it's happening. They think that voice is reality. They think those thoughts are facts, but they're not facts. They're scripts. Old, outdated, inherited scripts that you've been rehearsing for so long they feel like truth. Here's what I need you to understand. Your brain doesn't distinguish between what's true and what's repeated. If you tell yourself, I'm not capable enough times, your brain accepts it as operating instructions. It starts filtering your reality to match. It ignores evidence of your ability and amplifies evidence of your inadequacy. Not because you're actually inadequate, but because you've programmed yourself to believe you are. That's the terrifying power of self-talk. It doesn't just reflect your identity, it creates it. But, and this is the beautiful part, the same mechanism works in reverse. If you deliberately, consistently, intentionally feed your mind empowering language, your brain starts accepting that as operating instructions instead. It starts filtering for capability instead of limitation. It starts noticing what's going right instead of what's going wrong. It starts believing in your potential instead of reinforcing your doubts. This isn't wishful thinking. This is how neural pathways work. Repetition builds highways in your brain, and right now, you get to decide which highways get built. So how do you actually rewrite the voice inside your head? Step 1 is catching the old scripts. This requires awareness and attention. The next time you feel resistance, self-doubt, or that familiar sinking feeling of, I can't, pause. Zoom out. Listen to what your mind just said. Write it down if you can. See it for what it is, not truth, just a habit, just a phrase your brain learned to repeat because it heard it enough times. Catching the script is half the battle, because once you see it clearly, it loses its invisibility. And invisible beliefs are the most dangerous kind, because you can't challenge what you can't see. Step 2 is questioning the script. Ask yourself, is this actually true or just familiar? Where did this belief come from? Is this something I chose or something I absorbed? Would I say this to someone I love who was going through the same thing? That last question is especially powerful, because most people operate with a devastating double standard. They're kind, encouraging, and compassionate to others, but absolutely ruthless toward themselves. If your best friend came to you and said, I'm not good enough to do this, would you agree? Would you pile on? Of course not. You'd push back. You'd remind them of what they've accomplished. You'd tell them they're selling themselves short. Start giving yourself that same energy. Step 3 is installing new scripts, not fantasies, not affirmations that feel hollow and disconnected from reality. Honest, constructive, directional self-talk that your brain can actually believe. Instead of, I always fail, try, I'm learning from every attempt. Instead of, I'm not the kind of person who succeeds at this, try, I'm becoming the kind of person who succeeds at this. Instead of, I'll never be ready, try, I'm growing into readiness right now. These replacements aren't about lying to yourself. They're about telling yourself a better truth. A truth that accounts for your growth, your effort, and your potential, not just your past mistakes. Here's something else that matters enormously. Pay attention to how you talk to yourself during failure. That's the real test. When everything's going well, it's easy to be positive. But when you stumble, when you fall short, when something doesn't go the way you planned, that's when your inner voice reveals its true nature. Weak self-talk turns failure into identity. It says, see, I knew you'd mess this up. You always do. Strong self-talk turns failure into feedback. It says, okay, That didn't work. What did I learn? What's the next move? The difference between those two responses is the difference between someone who stays stuck and someone who keeps climbing. And let me tell you one more thing about self-talk that I think will change how you approach it forever. Your self-talk isn't just commentary. It's instruction. Every word you say to yourself is a directive that your subconscious mind tries to execute. When you say, "I can't focus," your brain hears that as a command and reduces your ability to focus. When you say, "I'm terrible with money," your brain treats that as a blueprint and reinforces spending habits that match. But when you say, "I'm getting better at managing my time," your brain starts looking for ways to make that true. When you say, "I handle pressure well," your brain starts organizing your responses around calmness instead of chaos. Your inner voice isn't background noise. It's the operating system your life runs on. Reprogramming takes time. It takes consistency. It takes patience with yourself on the days when the old scripts are louder than the new ones. But every single time you catch an old thought, question it, and replace it with something stronger, you're rewiring your brain. You're carving a new highway. And over time, that new highway becomes the default route. The old voice gets quieter, the new voice gets clearer, and one day, probably sooner than you expect, you'll realize that the voice inside your head isn't your enemy anymore. It's your coach. It's your mentor. It's the first one to remind you in the middle of difficulty, in the middle of doubt, in the middle of fear, that you've got this. And you do. Chapter 15. Stop rehearsing and step onto the stage. We've come a long way together. You've rebuilt your inner blueprint. You've trained your mind like a sculptor-shaped stone. You've cleared the mental static. You've rewired your thinking. You've forged emotional armor. You've learned to think independently. You've turned discipline into your closest ally. You've guarded your mental inputs. You've stretched your thinking across decades. You've mastered self-control. You've built real confidence through competence. You've developed the quiet power of silence, observation, and strategy. You've made yourself anti-fragile. You've rewritten the voice inside your head. And now we arrive at the most important chapter of all, the one where you stop preparing and start becoming. Because here's a truth that might sting a little. Preparation without action is just procrastination wearing a productive disguise. Let me ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly, just between you and your own mind. How much of your life have you spent getting ready to start? How many courses have you taken before allowing yourself to begin? How many books have you read while telling yourself just one more and then I'll feel ready? How many plans have you written, rewritten, refined, and polished without ever actually executing a single one? I'm not judging you. I've done the same thing. We all have. Because preparation feels safe. Preparation feels productive. Preparation lets you believe you're making progress without ever having to face the terrifying possibility of failure. But the truth is, no amount of preparation will ever make you feel completely ready. That feeling of readiness you're waiting for, it doesn't come before the action. It comes after. Confidence doesn't arrive at the starting line. It meets you somewhere along the track after you've already started running. Think about it this way. Imagine an actor who spends their entire life rehearsing in their bedroom. They memorize every script. They study every technique. They practice every facial expression in the mirror, but they never step onto a real stage. They never stand in front of a real audience. They never feel the lights, the nerves, the electricity of a live performance. Are they an actor? Technically, maybe. But are they living as an actor? No. They're living as someone who's eternally preparing to become an actor. And the gap between rehearsing and performing, that gap is where most people's dreams go to die. Not because they lack talent, not because they lack knowledge, but because they never made the leap from preparation to participation. You've spent these chapters building something incredible inside yourself. A new foundation, a trained mind, emotional resilience, discipline, focus, confidence, self-awareness, strategic thinking. These aren't just concepts you've absorbed. They're tools you now carry. But tools are useless if they stay in a toolbox. At some point, you have to pick them up and build something with them. And that point is now. Not when the timing is perfect, because it never will be. Not when the fear is gone, because it never fully leaves. Not when everyone around you believes in your vision, because they might not until they see it materialize. Now, with whatever you have, from wherever you are. So how do you actually step into the identity of the person you've been building throughout this entire journey? You start by defining that person with absolute clarity. Not in vague, feel-good terms, but in specific, actionable detail. What does this person do first thing in the morning? How do they respond when things go sideways? What do they say to themselves when doubt creeps in? How do they treat their time? How do they treat their body? How do they show up in their relationships? How do they make decisions? Get specific, crystal clear, because your mind can't aim at a blurry target. The clearer the picture, the easier it is to step into it. And then, this is the part that separates dreamers from doers. You start acting like that person today. Not perfectly, not flawlessly, just consistently. You make the choice that person would make. You keep the promise that person would keep. You show up the way that person would show up, even when it feels like you're pretending, especially when it feels like you're pretending. Because here's the secret nobody tells you. Every new identity feels like pretending at first. Every version of yourself that's bigger than the last one feels uncomfortable in the beginning. That discomfort isn't a sign that you're being fake. It's a sign that you're expanding. It's your old identity resisting the upgrade. And the only way through that resistance is repetition. Act like the person you're becoming, again and again and again, until one morning you wake up and realize you're not acting anymore. You've become them. But here's something I want to be really honest about. Stepping into a new identity means letting go of the old one. And that's harder than it sounds. Your old identity is comfortable. It's familiar. It's predictable. Even if it's not serving you, even if it's keeping you small, there's a strange kind of safety in it. You know the rules. You know what to expect. And your brain, which is wired to prioritize safety above all else, will fight to keep you there. It'll whisper things like, "This isn't really you," or "Don't get too ambitious," or "Remember what happened last time." And in those moments, you have to be stronger than the whisper. You have to choose the unknown over the familiar, the growth over the comfort, the future over the past. Your environment matters more than you think in this process. If every part of your current environment screams old identity, It's going to be an uphill battle to sustain the new one. The people around you, the spaces you occupy, the routines you follow, they all either support who you're becoming or anchor you to who you've been. That doesn't mean you need to burn everything down and start from scratch. But it does mean you need to be intentional about what stays and what goes. Spend more time with people who reflect your future. Create physical spaces that remind you of your goals. Build daily routines that reinforce your new identity. Small environmental shifts can create enormous internal momentum. And here's something that I think will free you if you let it. You don't need anyone's permission to become who you want to be. Not your family's, not your friends, not society's. Your transformation is not a group project. It's a personal revolution. And personal revolutions don't require applause. They require commitment. They require the willingness to be misunderstood for a season while the work is still invisible. They require the patience to keep building even when nobody notices. Because the world doesn't reward declarations, it rewards demonstrations. And every day you show up as your new identity, you're demonstrating something powerful. Not to the world, to yourself. Let me paint one final picture for you. Imagine yourself 1 year from today. You've been living as the person you defined in this chapter. You've kept the promises. You've made the hard choices. You've guarded your mind, trained your focus, strengthened your emotions, and shown up with discipline even on the days when everything in you wanted to quit. What does that person look like? How do they carry themselves? How do they feel when they wake up in the morning? How do they handle the challenges that used to flatten them? Can you see it? Can you feel it? That person isn't a fantasy. That person is you, the version of you that's waiting on the other side of consistent action. And the only thing standing between where you are right now and where that person lives is the decision to start walking, not running, not sprinting, walking, one step at a time, one choice at a time, one day at a time. The stage is set, the lights are on. The audience doesn't matter. What matters is that you step out of the wings and into the role you were always meant to play. Conclusion. This is not the end. This is the beginning. If you've made it this far, I want you to know something. I'm genuinely proud of you. Not in a vague motivational poster kind of way, I mean it. Because most people don't make it this far. Most people hear the first chapter, feel inspired for a few minutes, and then go back to scrolling. Most people never sit with ideas long enough to let them take root. But you did. You stayed. You listened. You absorbed. And whether you realize it yet or not, something inside you has already started to shift. The foundation has already begun to crack and reform. The old scripts are already losing their grip. The new identity is already stirring beneath the surface. You might not see the full picture yet, but it's there, growing, quietly, steadily, just like we talked about. Let me give you a quick reminder of what you now carry with you. You know how to tear down outdated mental blueprints and build new ones. You know how to sculpt your mind through consistent, deliberate training. You know how to clear the noise and sharpen your focus like a blade. You know how to rewire your thinking so it serves your future instead of trapping you in your past. You know how to feel deeply without being controlled by your emotions. You know how to think independently in a world that rewards conformity. You know how to turn discipline from a punishment into a superpower. You know how to guard your mental inputs and feed your mind with substance. You know how to zoom out and play the long game. You know how to practice self-control and choose long-term fulfillment over short-term comfort. You know how to build real, unshakable confidence through competence, not compliments. You know how to use silence, observation, and strategy to move through life with intention. You know how to become anti-fragile, turning life's heaviest blows into your greatest growth. You know how to reprogram your self-talk from saboteur to coach, and you know how to step into the identity of the person you were always meant to become. These aren't just ideas. These are life tools. These are mental instruments you can use every single day in every situation, in every season of your life. And the beautiful thing about mental tools is that they don't wear out with use. They get sharper. But here's my final truth for you, and I want you to carry this one close. Knowledge without application is entertainment. If you listen to this audiobook and do nothing differently tomorrow, it was just a pleasant experience. But if you take even one idea, just one, and apply it today, this becomes a turning point. A real, tangible, look back and remember this moment turning point. You don't have to implement everything at once. That's overwhelming and unnecessary. Just choose one thing, the one that hit you the hardest, the one that made you pause, the one that felt like it was written specifically for you. Start there. Start today. Start imperfectly. Just start. And on the days when it gets hard, and there will be days when it gets hard, remember this. You're not doing this because it's easy. You're doing this because the person you're becoming is worth the effort. The life you're building is worth the discipline. The mind you're crafting is worth the patience. You're not chasing perfection. You're chasing progress. And progress, no matter how small, is still forward motion, still growth, still proof that you're becoming something extraordinary. The world might doubt you at first. Let it. People might not understand your transformation for a while. That's fine. You're not building for their timeline. You're building for yours. And when the results start showing, when your decisions become sharper, when your presence becomes calmer, when your confidence becomes quieter but deeper, when your life starts reflecting the mind you've built, doubt won't just fade. It will disappear. Because extraordinary people don't need to convince anyone. Their lives speak, their growth speaks, their consistency speaks, and yours will too. So go, step forward, build the mind, live the identity, play the long game. Stay quiet when silence serves you. Stay strong when the world tests you. Stay focused when distractions call. Stay patient when progress feels slow. Stay committed when motivation disappears. Because on the other side of all of that effort is a life that most people only dream about. And you're not dreaming anymore. You're building. One thought at a time. One choice at a time. One day at a time. This was never just an audiobook. This was a blueprint. And now the construction begins. Go build something extraordinary. You're ready. You've always been ready. You just needed someone to remind you.